Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Joe from Startuprad.io, your startup podcast and YouTube blog from Germany, bringing you today another subject matter expert interview. And I would like to welcome you here. Hey, JP, how you doing?
Hi, Joe. Many thanks. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just one disclaimer, JP is not your official first name, right?
Yeah, correct. My official first name is Jan Philipp, but it's quite difficult to pronounce for other people. So therefore, JP would be fine.
And Jan Philipp Günther Burmeister is quite a long name, right?
It's quite a long name, and the Burmeister is new because I married a few months ago. Yeah.
Congratulations there.
Many thanks.
Today, we're going to talk, because you're a lawyer, about the new law in Germany regulating autonomous driving, because all the blogs been full about it, and it's not 100% done yet. The law is out there, but there are additional regulations underneath it which are not finalized yet. When I was preparing for this interview, I've seen the German Federal Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure published a press release that Germany will be the world leader in autonomous driving with this. And can we first start a little bit to put it in perspective? Because another federal ministry claimed Germany to be the first country in the world to have such a law. Can we first get a little bit into perspective, EU, US, globally, as far as you know, and then get into the nitty-gritty details?
Sure, of course, we can try. Well, the press release is not incorrect, let's put it that way. What I know so far is that it should be the first law governing the area of autonomous driving. And when you look into other states, for example, there are some initiatives in other European countries. For example, France has at least an initiative on that. There's something going on when you look, for example, into the United States. There are not on federal level, but on state level, there's also law on autonomous driving. And what I know is that also Asian countries, for example, China, they are highly interested into that, especially looking on Europe, what is going on there. But let's put it that way. It's not incorrect to talk about that this is the first law on autonomous driving, at least from that holistic perspective, what I have seen so far. Yeah.
And during my time of preparation, I was a little bit surprised that it's not actually completely new law, but it is a law that regulates all street traffic, and it basically gets updated, amended, or in Germany we call it Novellierung every few years, and therefore the content just gets into the normal street legislation. And we're talking about here the law that came into force, would be the right term, 2021, right?
Well, first of all, this is some kind of amendment to the Road Traffic Act, the German Road Traffic Act, and this was passed by the Parliament, and is somehow in addition to also an old law which amended the Road Traffic Act before, also focusing on somehow partial automation. And with regard to the entering into force, I guess because it's passed, it's effective as of the effective date, which has been a few weeks ago. And therefore it's currently enacted.
Don't worry about the date when it becomes law, because it is law as we're recording this on 29th of September, then it's already in force. So we don't need to bother when it came into force. And what does it basically say? I do believe I found when I went through disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer here. That's why I have competent assistance. In Article 1A, it says something like, it's a translation. It's made by me. It's not official. They're permitting highly or fully automated driver functions with certain requirements. And the producer of the car, meaning the car manufacturer, has to certify that the car matches these requirements. And when I went through a little bit, I'm not a big reader of laws, but I skipped through it. And actually, I realized I assume you would still need a driver's license to sit behind the wheel, even for a fully automated driver function, right? And what does this mean, all of that?
Yes, let's divide it a little bit. What you're talking about is the Article 1A. The Article 1A was passed already in 2017 and allowed somehow the use of highly automated or full automated driving. What now was passed during the last weeks is the new Section 1D, which at least from the letters which are in the law allows automated or fully autonomous driving. However, the description with regard to fully autonomous driving is not 100% correct, but you need to divide between highly automated driving, you compare it to certain levels, and the full autonomous or the full automation, and this is level 4. And what was now passed should address level 4, potentially level 5 in Germany.
And we're talking about SAE level 4 here. That's an organization that publishes standards, and we'll link down here in the show notes to their website. They have levels of driving, automation, and of course, if people say level 4, they can already deduce there's level 0, 1, 2, 3, but there's also level 5. So that means we're not completely at the fully automated driving. So there needs to be a driver, and he can be assisted quite a lot, but it's basically still a driver.
Well, the new law says that you do not need a driver at all. You need some kind of person, somehow technical surveillance person, which carries
a technical supervisor.
A technical, could be a technical supervisor in this regard, who can decide in case the autonomous system has some problems and can override certain commands. But you actually do not need a driver, and therefore also the new law is based on the responsibles with regard only to the holder and this technical supervisory person, and not focusing on the driver anymore, because you do not have a driver. You could potentially compare the driver with the technical supervisor, but actually you do not have a driver under the new law.
And one question, die Gretchenfrage, as we call it in Germany, this technical supervisor, does she need a driver's license?
Oh, this is a tough question. Because this is quite interesting. To give you some background, when I prepared for this interview, I saw some discussion going on. And with regard to this technical supervisor, one argue this must be a technical expert with a deep understanding of computer science law, or must even have a technical degree, and must potentially have a driving license. However, at least from my perspective, it is what I think would be common sense, at least from the people I listened to during the last weeks, that it would not be appropriate to have this technical this technical supervisor that he needs somehow a degree in information science law or must be an engineering expert because when you focus on the law and what it aims for it, you have here in mind some kind of people movers, which would unfortunately replace the work of a bus driver. And therefore, the idea could be that you switch somehow the work of a bus driver to this technical supervisor. And therefore, at least from my understanding, it would be general good to that the technical supervisor would have a driving license, but I don't think so that he needs a technical degree in information science. Definitely not. But there's discussion going on currently.
I was smiling when you talked about that, and I thought, maybe some universities can now advertise their computer science degree, and you get your driver's license on top.
On top of that, yeah. But being only the supervisor, but not the actual driver, but yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking about buses and cabs, taxis here. Yeah. This law, when you interpret it and juggle it around a bit, as we said, this not went to court yet, and eventually a judge has to rule, and the law gets amended. So that may be a few years down the road. But as you interpret it right now, would a bus or a cab still need a driver?
At least from my perspective, the bus or a cab won't need a driver. You have this vehicle, and in the vehicle there are the passengers. And only what is required, at least from other requirements, but with regard to the driver question, is that you have this technical supervisor. And the car should act on certain locations, in certain areas, really autonomously, can use the street and can drive from A to B in this local environment, and is somehow supervised by the supervisor. However, the vehicle must be able to, for example, stop or avoid certain harmful things. And therefore, you do not need a taxi driver anymore. You only need this guy who's supervising it. And this would be the supervisor.
We just recorded yesterday, this month in German Startups, Summer Wrap-Up September edition, where we talk about everything that was going on July, August, and September in the German-speaking startup scene. And when we recorded this, I remember there's now a car-sharing company that remotely drives the car to you and remotely drives the car away when you're done with it. Would it also be possible under the new law to have this technical supervisor remotely in another place, not in the vehicle itself?
Correct. This is the idea. It's also highly debated whether it's allowed to have the technical supervisor within the vehicle, because normally you don't have any steering wheel, you don't have any pedals, and therefore the law takes the position that the technical supervisor sits remote. But there must be a data connection between the technical supervisor and the car, of course, so that the technical supervisor is able to stop the autonomous driving or to give certain commands to the car. And you do not need even passengers. For example, this law focuses also on logistics and not only on people movers, but also when you transport certain goods from A to B.
So if I think about it in business terms, that would mean you may be able to cut down on the physical drivers in places like trucks, in places like buses, in places like cabs, and can put them in a remote cockpit where they can basically supervise one car, maybe even more. So that would basically mean you don't have to have the person like a truck driver driving all the way to from Munich to Hamburg and back, but basically you have people in a driving center and they're just taking 8-hour shift and then they go home. Maybe supervising 5 trucks, 10 trucks. I don't know.
Yes, correct. They do not need to drive remotely the truck. It's only sufficient that they can take over or can react on certain signals coming from this vehicle, from this truck, within a certain period of time to give new commands or to do something. And I'm not quite sure how many trucks or cars such a supervisor can control at the end of the time. However, it's possible that the supervisor is only notified in case the vehicle needs some additional information or some additional control, or there's an accident, or the vehicle runs into trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, difficult situation. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. So basically the law enables remote driving of vehicles with passengers and completely people-free vehicles, talking about just carrying goods from A to B to C, which may make me a little bit nervous if I'm a truck or taxi driver right now. But I do believe the effect will be felt sometime down the road. I'm not sure if there are already a lot of cars out there who can actually do that.
Yes, I'm aware of certain also startups who invented certain AI functions and certain techniques, how they could maneuver to cities. For example, there are also in the US certain startups and now becoming big companies because they invented some certain LiDAR systems or maps or navigation systems, and therefore at least from my perspective, there are some prototypes. For example, during the International Automobile Ausstellung in Munich, the IAA, there was some kind of prototype showing there up. And this, at least from my perspective, would be, especially focusing on that new law, would be more and more normal to us during the next years. However, I don't know when I will enter the first taxi or bus without a driver. But for example, when you look on railways or subway, for example, in Nuremberg or in other cities, they are operating without a driver. And I guess similar things could be also possible with regard to the road traffic, at least in a few years.
When you talked about this, I had in mind a person who sits in a lot of screens, and there's basically one screen, and it's basically shifting through all the cars he or she is supervising, and basically at one point there's a red frame blinking. Okay, now you have to act here. Okay, let me do. Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's what I had in mind. And many people sitting in a row. On the other hand, that may be an opportunity for somebody who's a cab driver, because instead of doing one ride like every hour and then waiting another 45 minutes and then doing another ride, they basically could shift from one to another ride by shifting the cars. That would also be possible. And I assume there would be at least some interaction, a little screen turning around and saying, hey, I'm your driver, I'm remotely, and now we're going.
Yes, I guess the whole business with regard to taxis, with regard to public transport, will change in the next years. And with regard to the person
Logistics.
who's now a taxi driver, logistics as well, of course, logistics, and the persons who are now truck drivers, taxi drivers, bus drivers. I'm not quite sure whether this job will still be there in the next, 15, 20 years. However, there are coming up new jobs in that area. For example, talking about this technical supervisor and other stuff.
As long as they don't need an advanced computer science degree, right?
Yes, yeah, I definitely agree.
Mm-hmm. Any other important implication we have not discussed yet?
Yes, what is a typical question on autonomous driving are the dilemma problems. I'm not quite sure whether you have heard of that. The question is you have an autonomous vehicle, and the autonomous vehicle should decide in a situation where there are only two possibilities, and should decide whether they should drive into a tree or into another vehicle, or should drive into a person and potentially harm this person or kill this person. And at least the new law gives some guidance here. They say, well, one point is you are not allowed to harm other people. That means that harm to a thing would be more acceptable than harm to other people. However, what they do not say is whether you should have an accident where two people are harmed or one people are harmed, because this is quite a difficult question. When you compare it and when you think about it even more, should you drive into a young person, a child, or should you drive into an old person? And the law is not gives not any guidance on that. But it gives at least guidance that they say you need to protect the human life at most. But it does not solve the whole dilemma problematic in a holistic way. And this is something which is often discussed. Should you harm the child? Should you harm the grandma, the grandpa, or should you harm the cat?
Best would be no one. But another question that comes to mind is then, okay, if somebody gets harmed, who is paying? The manufacturer of the car, the provider of the required high quality internet connection, the company who hires the driver, or the driver himself. So pick one.
We do not have any driver anymore, so therefore the driver is out.
The remote controller?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and this is also debated. Generally, the holder, in Germany you say Halter, would be the owner of the car. The owner of the car would be liable in this regard. And this is currently also for normal vehicles the case under German law. And then there would be an additional person here, which if she did it by fault, that he would or she would also be liable, and this would be the technical supervisor. And in addition, also in case there's a malfunction of the vehicle, which is coming from bad construction made by the manufacturer could also be liable. But however, as you do not have the driver anymore, the driver is out, and all the ideas from first going to the driver, second going to the holder, to the owner of the car, you need to change it a little bit. And therefore, you also increased the amount of maximum liability, because the holder has now a greater maximum liability, what he might need to pay in case of an accident. Yeah. But is that a difficult question? In one word, sorry, it would also be somehow difficult to prove where the malfunction is. Was this something coming from the manufacturer or a hacker? I don't know.
Are there requirements for, as you said, cybersecurity and data collection in order to decide about that? And how about the data privacy of that? So first, cybersecurity, what happens if you get hacked? Can this get hacked? And secondly, data privacy. And I just realized all the providers of the mobile internet who are essential for this to work at all, they are not necessarily in the liability circle, are they?
With regard first to cybersecurity, the new act addresses cybersecurity directly. It says that you need to implement sufficient measures in this regard to avoid hacking or to avoid any other also technical malfunction in this regard. And this is one big thing because this could cause enormous harm. The Act does not say what you need, because all the requirements, they are changing when the technique will develop further. But however, you need to implement certain measures. This is one point. In addition, with regard to the telecommunication or the communication between the car on the one hand and the technical supervisor on the other hand, it must be and this is a requirement that there's a strange connection. I don't know how this will work under the current network system. At least in Germany, it's somehow difficult. But however, maybe when implementing 5G and 5G is coming to be the next standard, then this could be one point which could be solved. However, is this a requirement that there is a direct connection and which is also appropriate between the car and the technical supervisor? Yeah.
And the data privacy, where can you store this information basically from all the drives?
Correct. There are also articles in the new law focusing on data protection, and as the holder or the owner of the car, you are responsible what the data collects. And there's also a concept that the car should collect as less data as possible. The data is generally, but this was also somehow discussed during the legislation process, generally stored in the car. However, the owner is required to pass some of information on, for example, to government authorities or to the Kraftfahrtbundesamt, for example, with regards to certain things. For example, if there's an accident, if there are malfunctions, all this stuff. And this is something which is highly debated, whether the data protection the regulation which is now in this act is sufficient also under the general data protection regulation, and how this connects and interlinks into that. And therefore, I guess some people say there could also be a violation of the European law, but we will see. The discussion is going on. But all this information and which is by a requirement of the law gathered must be generally stored and could be passed on to certain other parties. Yeah.
That is pretty interesting. We touched a lot of different points like autonomous driving, remote driving, cybersecurity, data transmission, data storage, and the producers. But as the audience can already tell, this law is in force, but it's far away from all the legal framework. All the rulings are finally established. So this is just getting ready. And anybody who'd like to learn more, we'll link down here in the show notes, not only your LinkedIn profile, but also some additional articles. Disclaimer, we could not find, for example, the whole text of the law all in English. We linked a few passages that are officially available in English here. JP, it was a pleasure having you here. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Joe, and many thanks for this great opportunity. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.